Look, I want to ask you about Prince Harry. He's set to go to the UK for the 3rd anniversary of Queen Elizabeth's death, where he will attend a charity event as well as is there.
There is a moment in every scandal where sympathy turns to suspicion, where patience curdles into disgust, and where even the most loyal supporters quietly step back. For Prince Harry, that moment came not with his memoir, not with his Netflix confessions, not even with the public feuds that shredded his relationship with his family. No, the moment of irreversible collapse arrived when he was accused of something so audacious, so unfathomably tone-deaf, that it seemed to strip away every excuse, every defense, every shred of credibility he once had. The moment he went to WellChild, a children's charity he had represented for years, and asked not for support for sick children, not for donations to save lives, but for a personal loan of $86 million. It was the request that shocked even those hardened to his antics. Nearly $2 million from a charity, from funds donated by ordinary people scraping their savings to support children with complex medical needs. The sort of request so reckless, so arrogant that it almost defies belief. And yet, insiders say it happened. A desperate plea from the prince who once embodied compassion, now reduced to supplicant, begging for himself. And in that request, in that single misstep, Harry cemented a new identity that critics have seized upon with glee and venom. The beggar, Prince. To understand the weight of this humiliation, one must first remember who Harry was supposed to be. Once, he was Diana's boy, the cheeky, red-haired rogue with his mother's heart and charm. He was the soldier prince who served in Afghanistan, the founder of Invictus Games, the young man who seemed to have inherited not the crown, but the compassion. For years, charities like WellChild basked in the glow of his patronage. He was their star ambassador, their golden ticket, the royal who seemed genuine. When he hugged a sick child, the world believed it. When he wept with grieving parents, no one doubted his sincerity. He was, for many, Diana's true heir. But time and choices have a way of corroding legacies. The Harry of today is not the soldier prince of yesterday. He is the exiled royal of Montecito, the Netflix celebrity, the memoirist who turned his life into content, the man who declared independence from the monarchy only to spend years lamenting being cut off. He is the man who promised to thrive without the crown, only to be seen struggling under the weight of lifestyle costs, Hollywood disinterest, and a reputation battered by endless complaints. And now, he is the man who asked a children's charity for millions. Picture the call. Matt James, the CEO of WellChild, sits at his desk. The phone rings. It's Harry, the Duke of Sussex, their longtime patron. At first, James might expect another fundraising initiative, another gala appearance, another plea on behalf of the children. But what comes next is almost unthinkable. Harry does not want to raise money. He does not want to shine light on the children's suffering. He wants money for himself. Alone. A staggering sum. The kind of request that would empty critical resources. The kind of ask that betrays not just poor judgment, but a warped sense of entitlement. James, insiders say, did not hesitate. His answer was firm, his tone unflinching. No, not a penny, not for this. The coffers are for the children, not for Montecito millionaires playing poverty. In that rejection, James did more than protect his charity's funds. He protected its soul, and in doing so, he stripped Harry of any remaining illusion of untouchable privilege. The Duke of Sussex had been told no, publicly, brutally, unmistakably. For Harry, the sting must have been unbearable. Here was a man used to doors opening, used to courtiers smoothing his path, used to deference. To be flatly rejected, to be humiliated not by tabloids but by a trusted ally, was a wound that no PR statement could dress. And the moment word leaked, the backlash was merciless. Social media lit up with fury. Donors fumed. How could he even dare? Parents of sick children, fighting for every breath their child takes, were horrified. To think their donations might even be considered for such a thing was nauseating. Headlines sharpened their knives. From soldier prince to beggar prince, the transformation was complete. The once beloved figure had crossed a line so egregious that even sympathetic commentators recoiled. And the irony was rich. For years, Harry had railed against the monarchy for cutting him off. He had insisted he and Meghan would forge their own path, that they would not rely on handouts, that they were independent. The Oprah interview had cemented this narrative. Poor Harry and Meghan, stripped of security, forced to fend for themselves in a cruel world. And yet, here he was, not going to a bank, not turning to wealthy friends like Oprah, Elton John, or Tyler Perry, but to a charity for sick children. The hypocrisy was so glaring it almost glowed in the dark. Critics wasted no time invoking Diana's name. For Diana was the epitome of giving, of sacrifice, of using her fame for others. She famously sold her dresses to raise money for hospitals. She walked through minefields to bring attention to the vulnerable. She would never, her loyalists insisted, have dreamed of asking a children's charity to fund her own needs. To see her son make such a request felt like a betrayal of her very essence. The woman, once hailed as the people's princess, now had a son being mocked as the beggar prince. And then there was Meghan. Her silence was thunderous. No statement, no defense, no attempt to spin. Insiders whispered that the strategy had her fingerprints on it, that her history of aggressive financial moves, the Netflix scramble, the Spotify collapse, the failed lifestyle ventures, aligned with this desperate attempt to secure funds. But if she was behind it, she left Harry to take the fall. Some say it was tactical, a way to distance herself from the humiliation. Others say she knew the backlash would be brutal and chose to let him bear it alone. Either way, her absence from the narrative only deepened suspicions. Meanwhile, the palace sat in icy silence. Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, Clarence House, none offered a word. But silence can be louder than condemnation. For Charles and William, this scandal was vindication. It proved what they had feared, what they had suspected, that Harry was no longer an asset but a liability, not a patron but a burden. To defend him would be to risk their own reputations. To extend sympathy would be to excuse the inexcusable. So they said nothing, and the nothing roared like thunder. Donors, however, did not stay silent. Many began pulling their support from WellChild, horrified by the association. Even though James had refused the request, the fact that it had even been made was enough to sow doubt. Would their money ever be safe? Would the charity's image be forever tainted? Harry had not just humiliated himself, he had risked damaging the very charity he was supposed to protect. And so the narrative spiraled. Commentators dissected his choices, tracing the arc of his downfall. From Afghanistan, hero to Invictus, founder, from royal rebel to California exile, from Netflix celebrity to beggar prince. Each step seemed to lead inevitably to this collapse. Each scandal chipped away at his image until only desperation remained. The nickname stuck. Beggar Prince. Cruel, yes, but devastatingly accurate in the eyes of the public. It captured everything. The fall, the hypocrisy, the humiliation. It was catchy, brutal, and impossible to shake. And as it echoed across headlines and conversations, it cemented a new identity that Harry may never escape. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the money. It was about what the request symbolized. It revealed entitlement, desperation, hypocrisy, and arrogance in one stroke. It showed a man who had lost touch with reality, who believed old loyalties could be exploited, who failed to see how far he had fallen. It was a moment that stripped away the last veneer of nobility and left only scandal. The soldier prince is gone. The compassionate patron is gone. The golden boy of Diana's legacy is gone. What remains, in the eyes of critics and the public, is the beggar prince. And for Harry, no rejection, no humiliation, no scandal has ever been quite so final. So final. There are scandals that fade after a news cycle. And then there are scandals that sink so deep into the public imagination that they cling like a shadow, reshaping a person's identity forever. What Prince Harry is facing now belongs to the second category, the kind of scandal that becomes shorthand, a punchline, a permanent stain. The world has watched him stumble before, through court battles, televised tell-alls, family feuds, and memoir confessions, but none of those quite compare to this. For in this scandal, Harry has been reduced to a label so cruel, so humiliating, and yet so devastatingly apt that it may follow him to the end of his days. He is no longer just the spare, the exile, the rebel. He has been branded the beggar, prince. And the story that led him there is one so audacious, so baffling, that even his most loyal defenders have been left silent. Because this time, it wasn't a squabble with William. It wasn't a bitter swipe at Charles. It wasn't even a gripe about the tabloids. This time, Harry allegedly asked WellChild, the children's charity he has been patron of for years, for a personal loan of $86 million. Not for fundraising, not for families, not for sick children. For himself. The very idea sounds surreal, almost like satire, yet insiders insist it happened. A desperate request, made quietly but firmly, that revealed the kind of arrogance only someone detached from reality could imagine was possible. It was the move of a man who believed loyalty would override ethics, that old bonds would justify crossing unthinkable lines. But charities exist on trust, and trust cannot be traded for personal comfort. When WellChild's CEO, Matt James, was confronted with Harry's request, he reportedly didn't hesitate. His answer was cold, swift, and devastating. No, not a penny. The coffers are for children, not for princes. It was a rejection that sliced through Harry's pride like a blade. A rejection he never imagined would come from an organization he once elevated. An organization that once basked in his glow. To understand the scale of this humiliation, one must remember the image Harry once carried. He was Diana's boy, the cheeky, red-haired son with his mother's heart and charisma. He was the soldier prince who had served in Afghanistan, walking among comrades, earning respect not just by title, but by action. He was the Invictus Games founder, champion of wounded veterans, the compassionate figure who bent down to hug sick children, who shed tears with grieving parents, who seemed authentic in a world of pageantry. At WellChild events, Harry was never the stiff royal in a suit. He was the one on the floor, holding a child's hand, laughing through tears. For years, that was his most powerful connection to Diana's legacy, the arena where he seemed to embody her compassion most purely. And yet now, that very legacy has been shattered by his own actions. Because what does it say when the man who once represented hope for sick children is now accused of begging money from them? What does it mean when the prince who invoked Diana's memory as his guiding star is caught doing the very opposite of what she stood for? Diana sold her gowns at auction to fund hospitals. Diana risked her life to walk through minefields for the vulnerable. And now, her son, her supposed heir in spirit, allegedly asked a children's charity to bankroll his own lifestyle. To many, it was nothing short of betrayal. The reaction was volcanic. Donors who had given their hard-earned money to WellChild felt sick. Social media erupted in outrage. Headlines sharpened their knives. Harry was no longer the soldier prince, no longer Diana's son, no longer the compassionate patron. He was the beggar prince, the man who asked the unaskable. Memes spread online mocking him with brutal humor. Talk show panels tore him apart. Even commentators who once defended him fell silent, unable to justify the unjustifiable. because at the heart of this scandal is not just bad optics, it is moral collapse. And what made it worse was the hypocrisy. For years, Harry and Meghan had built their brand on independence. They had sat with Oprah and declared they no longer relied on royal coffers, that they had carved their own path. They had insisted they were financially free, unshackled from the monarchy. Harry had even boasted about his deals, the Netflix millions, the Spotify podcast, the California mansion. Yet here he was, hat in hand, asking a children's charity for millions. The hypocrisy was too glaring to ignore, the irony too rich. Independence was a lie. The man who claimed freedom had been reduced to begging, and Meghan's role in this saga remains one of the most intriguing mysteries. Her silence has been deafening. No statements, no spin, no attempt to protect Harry from the humiliation. But insiders whisper that the loan request may have been her idea, a quick fix to patch financial shortfalls after a string of Hollywood flops. Netflix had cooled, Spotify had collapsed, and her lifestyle ventures had failed to ignite. The Sussex empire, once valued in glossy headlines as worth billions, was now wobbling. A short-term loan from WellChild might have seemed like a clever solution, a bridge across a financial storm. But if this was Meghan's strategy, it backfired catastrophically. And by staying silent, she allowed Harry to take the blame. Once again, critics argue, Meghan bulldozed while Harry absorbed the wreckage. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace said nothing. But silence in royal circles is rarely neutral. It is calculated, deliberate, and devastating. To Charles and William, this episode was vindication. For years, they had been criticized for freezing Harry, out for refusing to reconcile. Now they had proof that their caution was justified. To defend Harry now would be to risk dragging the monarchy into scandal. To stand by him would be to excuse the indefensible. So they stayed silent, and that silence spoke louder than any words. It said, "You are on your own." And the fallout did not stop with Harry. Other charities with royal ties began to whisper uneasily. If Harry could ask WellChild for money, what was to stop him from approaching others? Could any organization risk association with him now? Donors, after all, are not loyal to scandal. They give money out of trust, and once that trust is broken, it is nearly impossible to restore. Harry's credibility in the charity world, the last real anchor of his reputation, was bulldozed. No longer could he be seen as Diana's torchbearer. No longer could he represent the vulnerable without suspicion. He was now viewed as a risk, a liability, a man who might treat charitable coffers as personal piggy banks. The long-term damage is perhaps the most devastating, because once a public figure becomes a joke, it is almost impossible to climb back. The Beggar Prince label is catchy, cruel, and unforgettable. It spreads in memes, in headlines, in conversations. It becomes shorthand for failure. And once a man is reduced to a meme, rebuilding dignity becomes a near impossible task. Reports claim Harry erupted after the rejection, furious that his request had been exposed. He allegedly warned Matt James and his team not to spread lies, not to twist the story. But anger only fueled the fire. Rage makes a man look guilty, while Meghan's silence, cold and calculated, allowed her to dodge direct blame. And once again, the public narrative hardened. Meghan drives the schemes. Harry takes the humiliation. And perhaps the most painful consequence of all is this. Harry's legacy as a philanthropist, the very thing that once redeemed him, is gone. No charity can risk being tied to him now. No donor can look at him without suspicion. He is no longer the soldier prince, no longer the compassionate patron, no longer Diana's son carrying her torch. He is the man who begged a children's charity for money and was told no. And that image, that humiliation, will linger long after the outrage fades. Donors will not forget. The palace will not forgive. And the public will not stop mocking him. This scandal may be the final nail in the coffin of his public image. Not the rebel prince, not the independent duke, not even the exile with a story to tell, but the beggar prince. A man who destroyed his own legacy with a single reckless request. A man who revealed desperation, arrogance, and hypocrisy in one stroke. A man whose fall from grace is now complete. And so, here we are. Prince Harry, once Diana's golden boy, once the soldier prince, once the compassionate heart of the royal family, now red-faced after asking WellChild for $1 win. $86 million. Loan and being flatly rejected by CEO Matt James. The outrage has been fierce. The humiliation total. But the story is not finished until you decide how it ends. Because this scandal raises questions that only the court of public opinion can answer. Was this the moment Harry officially crossed the line from patron to beggar, prince? Was this the unforgivable betrayal of Diana's legacy? Or was it simply desperation, a terrible judgment call in a rough financial moment? So, I want to hear from you. Drop your verdict in the comments right now. Write beggar prince if you believe this scandal defines him forever. Write too harsh if you think Matt James went too far and Harry deserves more understanding. And let's not ignore Meghan. Was this another example of her reckless schemes pushing Harry into humiliation? Comment blame Meghan if you think she orchestrated it. Or all Harry if you believe the fault lies squarely with him. Because this isn't just about money, it's about legacy. Diana once sold her dresses to raise funds for children's hospitals. And now her son stands accused of trying to drain a children's charity to fund his own life. Has Harry betrayed her legacy beyond repair? Your voice matters here more than ever. Don't just watch. Participate. And if you want to be part of every twist and turn of this royal downfall, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because in our next episode, we'll ask the most brutal question of all. Has Prince Harry become the single biggest embarrassment in modern royal history? This is Crown and Controversy, unraveling the royals one scandal at a time. Don't forget to subscribe.